It's the Security Weekly News. I'm Doug White, and it's episode 307 on Friday, the 30th of June, 2023. We got Russian satellites, Cl0p, CISA, YouTube, ArcServ, EarlyRat, Aaran Leyland, and more on this edition of the Security Weekly News.
This is a Security Weekly production for security professionals by security professionals. Please visit securityweekly.com/subscribe to subscribe to all the shows on our network.
We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
It's the show that keeps you up to date on the latest security news twice a week, your trusted source for accurate security information and expert analysis. It's time for Security Weekly News.
Did you know that Active Directory is exploited in 9 out of 10 cyber attacks? With access to Active Directory, attackers can gain control of your network. To keep attackers out, you need to find and fix Active Directory security gaps. Meet Purple Knight, a free security assessment tool that scans your environment for hundreds of vulnerabilities and helps you fix the problems. Ready to reduce your Active Directory attack surface? Download Purple Knight, the #1 Active Directory security vulnerability assessment tool. Visit securityweekly.com/Semperis, SEMPERIS, for more information.
Business Security Weekly is recorded on Mondays at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. Each week, we address the challenges facing CISOs through our guest interviews, including former and active CISOs. Our news segment is focused on leadership and communication to better help security leaders translate and communicate security risks into business risks. Jason Albuquerque, Ben Carr, Tyler Robinson, and others add their expertise to the conversation. I'm Matt Alderman, and I hope you search for Business Security Weekly in your favorite podcast catcher and subscribe to download our latest content.
All right, welcome to the Security Weekly News. It's a big holiday weekend in the United States. It's getting off to a booming start today. It's a time of gathering, eating, drinking, arguing, more drinking, more arguing, fighting, going to the emergency room, Uncle Mark blowing his left thumb off with fireworks, that kind of stuff. So be safe out there. Well, MOVEit, the story that just won't die, and Cl0p, are back. And we've basically been seeing this MOVEit compromise stuff for about a month now, and it doesn't really seem to be improving very much. Cl0p ransomware claims to have exploited the zero-day in MOVEit in targeting hundreds of organizations, and they added more victims to their website this week. And they claim to have hacked Siemens Energy and Schneider Electric among some of the newest listings. So if you're not familiar with them, and you probably are, Siemens and Schneider are large manufacturers of IoT and OT equipment that's used in a lot of infrastructure sites. The companies are based in Germany and France, respectively. Siemens confirmed the attack, and they said that they took immediate action in response. Their statement said, quote, "Based on the current analysis, no critical data has been compromised and our operations have not been affected." Schneider said they became aware of the attack on the 30th of May and deployed immediate mitigations to secure data and infrastructure. Cl0p went on and listed Sony, EY, PwC, which I presume is PricewaterhouseCoopers, or maybe it's something else, Cognizant, AbbVie, and UCLA, the University of California, Los Angeles, but there was no confirmation from those companies as yet that they had been attacked. Cl0p is a well-known Russian cyber criminal gang. They reputedly don't attack governments and schools, although, they're a cyber criminal gang. And once you go down that road, well, it's hard to come back. The Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, called CISA, and the National Security Agency, which is called the NSA, have now released guidance on how organizations can secure continuous integration and continuous delivery pipelines against attack. The PDF document that they released includes recommendations and best practices for hardening the CI/CD pipeline cloud deployments and improving DevSecOps. Basically, if you aren't familiar with this industry, CI/CD pipelines are infrastructure. They carry oil, gas, water, all kinds of different stuff all over the United States and pretty much all over the world. And they have been, over the last few years, moving their control systems, which controls all the valves and switching and all that stuff, into the cloud. So as a result, of course, that means these components, which used to be, accessible only out in a little shed in a field somewhere, and, Farmer Brown's got a 12-gauge shotgun that if he sees somebody on his land, he opens fire immediately and starts screaming Second Amendment. And so bad people are running like hell. But now, of course, those components are being accessible from just about anywhere. because they're based in the cloud. Organizations are advised by CISA to use strong cryptography, strong credentials, signatures on configurations, two-person code update rules, least privilege, network segmentation, credential controls, and all the stuff that we have been telling you for years. Starting to get on into that like decades level of stuff. I think maybe even on the first episode, I don't know, maybe the first episode of Paul's Security Weekly was just Larry and Paul building a potato gun and drinking. I'm not really, that's kind of hazy, but it wasn't long after that we started talking about that. So it's probably a reasonable document for anyone to take a look at and see what they're recommending. And you really do need to be doing these things. I mean, we say it all the time. We see compromise resulting from these things all the time, especially if your infrastructure. So start focusing on this. Well, YouTube is trying out a new policy, which is in beta right now. Basically, they said it was a, quote, small experiment globally, end quote. Okay, whatever that means. Basically, though, they were warning users that if they don't disable their ad blockers, they will be limited to only 3 video views. Don't know how that works. Don't know what that does in like incognito modes and things like that. But regardless, they basically said if you don't watch our ads, we're going to block you. So YouTube is apparently, if you are subject to this small experiment, they're apparently going to display a pop-up which notifies you that you're being targeted in the test, and that, quote, your video player will be blocked after 3 videos unless you disable your ad blockers. YouTube was asked if they plan to block users using ad blockers permanently, and the reply said that playback might be temporarily disabled in, quote, extreme cases, whatever that means. Another experiment they did in May involved blocking ad blocker users from accessing the platform at all. So, I mean, I sympathize. I don't like ads either. You know, I don't want to sit through 15 ads so I can watch a 30-second video of some guy gargling mayonnaise or whatever is going on. But I will tell you, ads, just like on our show, pay for the free content that you're watching. So it's one of those, you know, lesser of two evils kind of things, I guess. I mean, I do hope we're not heading toward a 15 million merits scenario. And if you don't know what 15 million merits means, that's an episode of the show Black Mirror. And on that show, you know, you basically constantly have to earn your keep, and part of that earning is watching ads. So if you even look away from the ads, it starts beeping and saying, look back at the ad, look back at the ad. Frederick Pohl and C.M. Kornbluth wrote about this kind of thing way back in 1952 in their series called The Space Merchants, about these uncontrolled ad stuff. So I don't know. I mean, it's definitely something for our industry to think about, you know, like both on, you know, ad blocking as well as not ad blocking. So there's a lot of issues in that. But don't be surprised if pretty soon you're getting blocked if you don't watch the ads. Maybe they'll track your eyeballs too, like in 15 million merits. ArcServ UDP is a data and ransomware protection solution, and a new version has been released, version 9.1, which is going to fix a vulnerability. The vulnerability was found 4 months ago and reported by MDSec Active Breach Red Team. A critical authentication bypass was found during a red team exercise, which would allow access to the administrative interface of ArcServ UDP, something we talk about all the time as well. These administrative and management interfaces are problematic. Don't expose them to the internet. Now, in this particular case, the problem would allow attackers on the local network _local network to access the UDP admin interface by capturing SOAP requests, which contain auth UUIDs, which gets you a valid administrator session. Now, when I _local network, if you expose that administrative interface to the public web, that means it could actually be a remote attack, I think. So you might want to keep that in mind. The admin creds that you get out of that attack on the SOAP packets or the SOAP traffic would actually allow the attacker to log in, destroy the victim's data by wiping all your backups using this tool. And that would mean that when you get ransomware, which is probably a part of this whole attack, you aren't going to have your backups there unless you have something else we've been telling you about for years, out of band storage of your backups, meaning you've got another set of them in a vault somewhere so they can't get to them. MDSec also shared a proof of concept exploit and tools which will scan for ArcServ UDP with default configs on your local network. So a useful tool, because if you have users that have installed this kind of thing on your networks, you need to be sure you're aware of that and that they're updating and patching and so forth. So if you are using ArcServ UDP, patch it. get the new version and get it patched up. The tools, I think, are useful, so you may want to grab those as well. Well, in the United States, the White House is trying to ensure that government agencies adopt plans aligned with their cybersecurity policy, initiatives, standards, and directives. The government has been pushing out all these directives for about the last 10 years or so. The guidance that was issued this week included a memo which was signed by the Office of Management and Budget, which is called the OMB in the United States. And it is focused on the 5 pillars of action, which were outlined in the National Cybersecurity Strategy issued earlier this year by the White House. Essentially, what's going on is the White House is expecting government agencies subject to this stuff to explain how their budget plans will tie into the broader security initiatives across the federal government. For instance, the Zero Trust Initiative. So they want you to show that the budget you're getting is being used effectively on plans that tie into the government directives. Tech modernization, all those things that have been the focus of the last few years. But the plan is that the OMB wants to ensure that each agency's 2025 budget plan includes plans to acquire software and services needed to inventory crypto systems and start moving them toward NIST-approved algorithms. Some of this came out of initiatives worried about quantum computing being able to crack all this crypto. So they're trying to get out in front of it so that all of a sudden they're not left with a 5-year plan to correct something that's already happened. So they're trying to push they're just trying to push the point. All of this is about future-proofing federal cyber defenses and trying to ensure higher standards are used to secure software, devices, cloud use, pretty much anything the government uses. So basically, they just want agencies to show that they're making progress and budgeting effectively. In that same light, U.S. federal agencies are apparently still running hundreds of remotely accessible management interfaces, like we've just been talking about, that don't meet current security requirements, according to a report from Census. Back on the 13th of June, the CISA issued a binding operational directive called 23-02, which we talked about before, and it requires all federal civilian executive branch, which are called FCEBs, agencies to harden their internet-exposed network edge and remote management devices. They are supposed to remove all management interfaces using HTTP, HTTPS, FTP, SSH, Telnet, and other protocols that are being exposed and make them only accessible from the internal network, which is still a problem in my opinion, but not nearly as bad of a problem as when you stick the thing out on the internet. This was supposed to happen within 14 days, so that would have made the deadline the 27th of June, which was this week. Census said that in a 26th of June blog post that they analyzed the attack surfaces of more than 50 organizations and sub-organizations and found over 13,000 hosts across more than 100 autonomous systems at FCEB agencies. There were around 250 instances of web interfaces for hosts that were exposing network appliances with protocols up to and including, wait for it, Telnet. Poor old Telnet. I mean, that thing really needs to go out behind the barn and be put down. I mean, we just need to take it out and say, no more Telnet. I mean, I'm sorry, Telnet. We loved you. You were awesome. But now you're old and foaming at the mouth, and you really need to go. But they basically found everything. They found MOVEit transfer interfaces, Go Anywhere MFT, and all of these other things that are constantly being exploited and currently being exploited along with anything and everything else. Probably there's probably TFTP interfaces being exposed. It wouldn't shock me. They had 10 hosts that allowed directory traversal on the web server. I mean, that's like, what, a hack from like the 1990s? You got to stop this stuff. They found Nessus vulnerability scanning servers exposed, Barracuda email security gateways interfaces, and over 150 instances of end-of-life software that was still being used, just like you would probably expect. It is really, really easy to issue these directives. It's a lot harder to get people to comply because I know what the response is. When you tell people to fix this, they immediately say, give me the budget and the people and I'll do it. But I mean, we're going to have to fix this stuff, or some 10-year-old kid somewhere is going to log in and play global thermonuclear war. I mean, we really need to fix this up. That's from War Games, if you didn't get the reference. I think he was older than 10, though. He looked older than 10. I don't know. A new remote access Trojan called EarlyRat is now being used by North Korean attackers, which will exploit Log4j in phishing campaigns. Kaspersky found the new malware, and they've attributed it to an APT called Andariel, or Stonefly. I like Stonefly a lot better because I don't know what Andariel even means. Is it like a kind of sausage or something? I mean, it sounds like sausage, right? I'll have the Andariel sausage and pasta, please. Skip to pasta. But anyway, Andariel is known to have actively exploited Log4j last year using DTRAC and MagicRat as components, but now appear to have switched to the new malware. Kaspersky says that Andariel used a number of off-the-shelf tools that installed and ran during their command execution phase and included supremo, remote desktop, 3proxy, and PuTTY. They went on to say that EarlyRat did appear to lack the complexity that they often associate with North Koreans like Lazarus. So this was kind of a low-end group, but that doesn't mean they're not causing problems. Lazarus, of course, is the most notorious of the North Korean APTs and often use very sophisticated attacks. Lazarus and Andariel were both sanctioned by the U.S. Office of Foreign Assets Control in 2019 for conducting ransomware attacks on the SWIFT interbank messaging system and on other targets within the United States. This was how they were raising money to support North Korean weapons and missile programs. So just wonderful. Yeah. Well, as a pro wrestler, he worked under the names Big Ben and the Tower of London. In his new book, and this part is actually real, it is called Tower Explorers, The Echoing Secrets of the Tower of London, and you can buy it on amazon.co.uk, so you should buy it. I mean, it's probably a pretty exciting book. I have already bought it, but my copies have not yet arrived because they're being shipped via pack mule by way of Greenland, I think, and or something. Maybe they strapped them to a dolphin and sent them across the ocean. But please welcome Aaran Leyland. There's the book.
You won't be able to see it. It's like
it's like wiped out. It's like redacted.
It's redacted, which is really good because I hope it's absolutely nothing to do with my story today and the Tower of London and that being my wrestler name, because that could probably get us kicked off the air again, Doug.
I'm not afraid. We'll go forth.
Well, going forward, the first words I've written on my made-up teleprompter is delving deep into a controversial issue that's making waves across the global tech scene, a proposed UK legislation that could potentially punch holes in the armor of encrypted messaging. The legislation, aptly named the Online Safety Bill, is making its way through the chambers of the UK Parliament, raising eyebrows and triggering widespread debate. Allegedly, the bill aims to keep the digital space safe by holding tech platforms accountable for the spread of child abuse material on their platforms. Noble as the cause may be, the method, potentially breaking the robust end-to-end encryption of messaging apps, has led to some serious pushback. No shock. I'm totally not surprised that they throw child abuse at us to tug at the heartstrings, but honestly, in my opinion, in my humble opinion, this is a much bigger issue. Joining this high-stakes tussle is Apple, along with more than 80 technology organizations who have appealed to UK lawmakers to give due consideration to wider privacy implications of this bill. I'm going to get a bit cispy here and no further for all you tech nerds out there. The technology that's at the heart of this debate, end-to-end encryption, or E2EE, as we call it in the biz, is a system that protects communication from being viewed by anyone other than the sender and the recipient. It is a fortress of privacy, ensuring that even the platform providing the service can't peek into the content, although it seems like it sometimes with advertising. But hey, who knows? Maybe that's to come out another day. In its current form, the Online Safety Bill allows Ofcom, the UK's communication regulator, to potentially override this encryption and force platforms to scan messages for prohibited content. Okay, so what does breaking encryption really mean? I'm going to walk you through a technical-ish journey of encrypted message bit more CISP and not very technical, to be honest. End-to-end encryption is built on a foundation of complex mathematics, which Doug can tell you all about when we go back to them, and the principles of asymmetric encryption or public key encryption, Diffie-Hellman and all that cool stuff. Each user participating in communication has two keys, a private one that's securely kept to themselves and a public one that's available to everyone or anyone. These keys are mathematically linked. What one key encrypts, only the other can decrypt. It's just like magic. And it's weird. Does anybody else immediately start remembering colors of paint, one side each, mixing them and then trying to work out from the new color what the old colors were? I don't even know where that came from. Maybe there's some crypto logic in there somewhere. Anyway, so when you send a message, your device uses the recipient's public key to encrypt the message. The result is scrambled, unreadable data blob, like how I got really technical there, that can only be decrypted using the corresponding private key, which the recipient holds. Intercepting the message while it's in transit is futile, what a great word, without the private key, and content remains a mystery. Most of my messages maintain a mystery anyway, especially after he appears last night. But hey, we go on. However, the magic, of modern E2EE systems doesn't end there. They employ a principle called perfect forward secrecy, good term for your CISP exam there, which generates a new key for each message or session. This further confines any malicious actors who, even after they manage to somehow obtain a private key, can decrypt only a limited amount of data before the key changes. So it's essential to remember that while E2EE keeps the content of your communication safe, it doesn't obscure metadata, including who you're communicating with and when. To protect this kind of data, further layers of security are needed. Answers on a postcard, and we'll publicize it. Coming back to the online safety bill, Apple has stated even that it's ready to join forces with the British government to eradicate abusive content on its platform, but it also warns that breaking end-to-end encryption brings its own suite of privacy risks, or privacy, depending where you come from. Apple believes E2EE is a critical defense protecting journalists, human rights activists, diplomats, and everyday citizens just like us from surveillance, identity theft, fraud, and data breaches. They're urging the government to amend the bill and uphold strong E2EE for the collective benefit. But isn't just Apple that's concerned? An open letter to the UK Technology Minister, Chloe Smith, that was a new name I learned today, from the Open Rights Group, another new organization I learned today, and over 8 other entities warns about the security risk of scanning citizens' messages without their consent. They firmly state that it's not possible to scan messages for bad things without infringing on the privacy of lawful messages. WhatsApp, Signal, and other encrypted messaging apps are also voicing their objections. Signal, in a bold statement, go Signal, although you're sounding a bit like Russia, but anyway, declared that if the bill became law, it would rather cease its operations in the UK rather than comply. You have been told, whatever that organization was. In examining today, myself, the pros and cons of implementing backdoors in E2EE, we find ourselves amidst a complex debate. From a law enforcement perspective, backdoors could provide access to communication in criminal investigations. They could even potentially intercept and decode messages exchanged by criminals, preventing crime and aiding investigations. But will the police turn up at my house after I've been robbed? Will this free up time for proper policing? Let's wait out. Glass half empty there. From a national security viewpoint, backdoors could aid in intelligence gathering and surveillance, possibly preventing threats to national security, which all sounds good, but like Snowden, the NSA, PRISM and stuff, However, every coin has two sides. Backdoors, by their very design, create vulnerabilities within the system. If a backdoor exists, it could be discovered and exploited by hackers, cybercriminals, or even foreign governments. This exposure could lead to identity theft, blackmail, corporate espionage, and a litany of other private information-related crimes. And honestly, listening to Doug, there seems to be enough of that going on in the news already. Then there's the impact on privacy or privacy. E2EE is built to provide privacy and security. A backdoor is fundamental breach of this design, opening up potential surveillance avenues to all users. Like back to the NSA. Although, I don't know. Do people worry about the NSA more or nation-state actors? Answers on a postcard. Moreover, backdoors could undermine the trust in digital systems, potentially causing economic damage and slowing down the overall adoption of technology. And I'm not sure how it's going over there on stateside, but over this side of the pond, we're all getting our food from food banks and close to defaulting on our mortgages. This is a bit of a plea, a cry for help. You should probably throw us a few trillion just to see us over till payday, of course. On the international stage, the matter becomes even more complex. If one government can demand a backdoor, what's to stop others from doing the same? Well, look at Russia, North Korea, Iran, and all our other favorite cyber adversary states. It seems to be okay, right? And let's not forget the practicalities of implementing backdoors. It's a highly complex process, and obviously us as like information technology cyber people aren't smart enough. But it's likely to be ineffective. Sophisticated criminals might simply turn to other uncompromised methods of communication, leaving only the innocent parties exposed. After all, they're the ones with the money, the bigger reason to hide it. And in my humble opinion, us with least to hide probably get hurt the most. As the disclosures around UK online safety bill intensifies, we're left contemplating the delicate balance between security and privacy. What will the future hold for E2EE and our online privacy? I am feeling very glass half full on this, but we'll see whose voice is louder soon enough. Thank you. I'm back to Dr. Doug in the studio, who flew over the top of me last week and never dropped a big pack of cash on me. I can come over and collect it if Paul pays for my flights. Back to you in the studio, Doug.
Thank you, Aaron. That all sounds very reminiscent of the Clipper chip PGP stuff that went on in the U.S. Many, many years ago, where the government was trying to pressure people to embed backdoors in cryptography so that with warrants they could look at it. And, of course, the same debate happened then, and it was a disaster. So hopefully they will learn from the past. All right. And finally, in a win for the good guys, a Russian military satellite was knocked offline by a cyber attack on Wednesday and was still down yesterday. The incident looked like one of the early Ukrainian invasion incidents that went on. The satellite's operator is Dozer Teleport, and they had to switch users over to terrestrial networks, which sounds really cool. If calling yourself a terrestrial network engineer sounds a lot better than just a network engineer. But no statements have been released about exactly what happened, but two different groups have now claimed responsibility for this attack. One of them just called itself a hacktivist organization, and the other one claimed to be part of the Russian mercenary group Wagner, or Wagner, I don't know how they say it. But the groups claimed to have sent malware to the satellite terminals that were being exposed. It's just the theme of everything lately is like, don't expose your stuff. I'm not trying to help the Russians defend themselves, but there is no clear indication of whether this actually involved Wagner or not. But, you know, maybe it did, maybe it didn't. I mean, there's been so much chaos going on over there, you just never know. Anyway, happy hacking. Next week is the 4th of July holiday week, and we will be airing some oldies but goodies for my old show, Secure Digital Life. So be sure and tune in while you're drinking, fighting, starting barbecue fires, and shooting off explosives in your backyard. Also, don't get hurt. We'll see you back live on the 11th of July.